will you guys help me welcome Pastor Ben Stuart?
Gymnastics to get in here.
There we go. Well, hey,
All right.
we are so grateful that you're here.
Okay.
This is fun.
All right. Yeah.
You know a couple things about relationships.
Well, so my wife
there's a book.
just FaceTimed me. She is at a resort in Tucson leading worship for CEOs. And she was like, look, I've got my own plunge pool. She's like, show me around the room. Look, I've got an indoor and outdoor shower. I have my own mountain. And I'm like, why am I not there? Like, how did we organize this? So this is how much I love you guys, that I should be at a resort in Tucson with my wife, but I'm here with you to help you.
Yes.
No,
You got to that point. You need to show us how you got there.
Yeah. But no, this is fun. I'm excited about this.
Yeah.
And excited that the dude's from the front row. I don't know why. What's up, fellas?
That's rare.
I don't know how this happened, but
Fellas
yeah.
in the front.
Yeah.
Well, hey, you know a good bit of things about relationships. Wrote a book about it.
Book about it.
And when you wrote that book, you were ministering to and pastoring tons of college students, right?
Yeah.
And you were kind of preaching on relationships, and it led you to write a book. So walk us through that path of what led you to write this, which, by the way, so excited to give everybody a copy at the end.
Hey.
It'll be fun. So you'll walk home with
Come
one.
on.
That'll be fun.
The pressure's off for me to answer it all now. Yeah, I would say my college buddies still find it hilarious that I wrote a book on dating, because my dating experiences in college were a dumpster fire. Yeah, trash is a good word. Yeah, they were not very organized. But I would say, I mean, the genesis for this thing for me started when I was single. I mean, because I had friends that were writing letters to their future wife in prayers for them. And I was like, are like Christians supposed to do that? And so I started to try to write one to her, and I was like, dear, man, I don't know. I was like, and I realized God doesn't owe me a wife. Like, he could kill me tomorrow and I'm not a victim. He gave me life. It's a gift. He doesn't owe, I don't want to assume he owes me one. I'd like to be married. And I had to be honest about that. I want to be married. And I can ask him for that. But that led me on this journey of like, then what is singleness for? If it's not ultimately to find a spouse, like, what am I supposed to be doing here? And I really started to dig into the Bible, 1 Corinthians 7. We'll maybe talk about some of that. Like, what is singleness for? If God's given all of us a season of singleness, how do I know I've done it well? Like, it will end either by marriage or death. It will end. How do I know if I did this season well? And I got this real conviction about what my singleness was for. And it made my single season so good. I was like, maybe I'm supposed to be single the rest of my life. Like, I was really focused. And then I met Donna, and that changed immediately. But then fast forward, I became a college minister, and this will date me, but right when I stepped in, my college students were like, hey, man, we got to show this crazy thing that just started called Facebook. It's wild. Like, people's faces are in this thing. But you got to imagine, like, that was 06, 07, 08, 09, like iPhone's coming out, social media's coming out. And I sat there, and I stood in the college moment for over a decade, and I watched dating and relationships get increasingly more complicated. And I just got to stand there and watch a generation of people go, you're constitutionally the same. It's not like, well, these kids today, their parents must have eaten less iron. There's something wrong with these kids. You're like, no, you're the same kind of human, but the shifts in technology and some shifts in culture have made this path more complicated. It's not your fault. It's your problem that you got to manage, but it's not your fault. And so that kicked off a compassion in me that I didn't want to be the dating guy. I wasn't like, wouldn't this be neat to write a dating book? You're like, people have strong feelings and there's a lot of ambiguity. That's a recipe for a lot of hate mail. But I was like, but I just want to be as helpful as I can. So that's where this came from. And that's how I got into it. And that's why we're doing this.
Yeah.
So anyway,
So it didn't necessarily birth of you looking at college students that you needed to preach and teach to. It started when you were in college and you were in that space.
100%. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Dang. Well, I'm excited because we have your questions.
These are y'all's.
These are you guys' questions. And throughout the night, we're going to have some of you guys stand up to ask questions. And so you know they're asking questions on behalf of everybody. So it is not Caleb's personal question, but Caleb will ask a question. But the first question, which I think is a good pathway from where we just were, is how do you navigate being single in college while facing pressure from family and older generations to date? So how do you be single when your parents are like, where's your girlfriend?
What are you doing?
Where's your boyfriend?
Is that real? How many of y'all feel that pressure? Maybe not from your parent. Okay. Yeah, it's like a third. Okay. I'll try to do this one quick. Because I don't know all the family dynamics of the person who asked that, so it could get real nuanced. But like, how do you feel the pressure? I would say that constant question. So what's going on? Are you going to get married? All that. Like, it's probably coming from a place of love and genuine concern, is what I would say. And then I would also say at a cultural level, people always ask about the next thing because they don't know what to say. And you just know that, right? I mean, when you're a senior in high school, they're like, oh, that's great. You know where you're going to college? When you're in college, you're like, oh, that's great. What's your major? When you got a major, you're like, oh, that's great. Where's your internship? When you got an internship, you're like, oh, that's great. Where are you going to work? When you start working, oh, that's great. Where are you going to get married? When you get married, oh, that's great. When you have kids. And like, because they don't know what else to say. And I remember when Donna and I got married, we're like, man, we've been married 6 months. And people are like, when you don't have kids, when you don't have kids. And she's like, everyone's pressuring me. And I'm like, they're not pressuring you. They don't actually care. They just don't know what to say. I said, so what you got to do is you got to give them an answer. Because here's what's happening. They're going to go have tea or coffee or whatever with their friends, and their friends' parents sit around and talk about children. And if they say, well, how's your daughter? How's your son? You're like, I don't even know what he's doing. Like, then it sounds bad. So I was like, you got to give them words they can say. It's like, so give them that. And so don't get mad at your parents when they ask that. Proverbs 15 says a soft answer turns away wrath, right? But a harsh one stirs up anger. And so if she's like, where's your boyfriend? You're like, you don't know me. Then you're like, okay, this is not going to end well. But an apt answer brings joy is what Proverbs 15 says. So you just got to give them something to say. Mom, I'm learning a lot in school. I've got some great friendships. I've got a good friend group. I'm learning a lot. I just haven't met somebody romantically who I'm interested in yet, but I'm growing a lot and it's great, Some of it, and I'll end here, might be just because you do it really differently. Like I remember my dad asked me, we were just cruising around once. He was like, son, you like girls? I was like, huh? And he's like, well, you never bring any around. I just didn't even know. And I was like, yeah, what? Yeah, what are you talking about? And I realized, I was in a vibrant Christian community, and that's not how my dad came up. But then when he went and saw my life, he didn't understand me when I tried to explain it, but he watched the way I lived. Jesus said that once. He said, wisdom is vindicated by her deeds. And so when my dad saw my life, he's like, I wish I would have done college the way you're doing it. So some of it is he just needed to see I'm navigating relationships in a healthy way, and it gave him peace. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah. That's
all right. There's more you can say, but I'm trying to get as many as we can.
Still on the topic of singleness, here's a good question. If God calls me to be single forever, would I be okay? I love the honesty of that verse.
Would you?
But this is a good follow-up question to that. Would my desire for marriage override my call to singleness?
Yeah. Let me say this. Would you be okay? I love that. God equips us for the seasons we're in, right? I mean, we do know that. That's 1 Corinthians 10. No temptations overtaking you except what is common for man. God is faithful. He will not allow you to be tempted beyond your ability. So if you're saying, can I be single and honor God with my desires, with my sexuality? Can I do that? The answer is yes, you can. Not because you're so great. I mean, Paul will say in 2 Corinthians, hey, we utterly despaired of life. He said, God put us into a place where we were completely beyond our own internal resources. And he said, but it was so we could rely on God who raises the dead. So I'm not saying like you have the internal resources to survive. You may get to the place where you go, I'm so lonely, I have so many longings, I have so many desires, it's relentless. And God says, but I will be there and I will strengthen and sustain you. So part of singleness is learning that, what Paul will tell the Corinthians in 1 Corinthians 7. Singleness is to secure an undistracted devotion to the Lord. I'm going to get that relationship right. And as I lean on him, I find he has the grace for every day for me, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that's part of it. You lean on his all-sufficient grace. But that question, would my desire for marriage override my call to singleness? We could get into that. Like, how do you know you're called to singleness? Like, how do you know that? Like, did you feel that? Is that a feeling? Did someone prophesy that over you? Is that real? Like, how do you even know? It's interesting. If you look scripturally about singleness, Paul will talk about it to the Corinthians in 1 Corinthians 7. I'll read this to you. He says, but because of the temptation to sexual immorality, each man should have his own wife and each woman her own husband. It's wild there that he says, like, some of you are going to have a desire for to have sex. And so you should have your own spouse. Like, oh, okay. And then later he says, I wish everyone was like I am. And some people say single because Paul stayed single. And some people go, does that mean you wish we were like you, like as a single person, or we wish we were like you maybe had a diminished sex drive and didn't want to be single? It's a bit of a mystery in the text. People say that. I think he's just talking about being single, but he says, but God each has his own gift from God, one of one kind and one of another. And Paul realized the advantages of singleness, maybe freedom and flexibility, are more conducive to my calling to preach, and I'm good with it. And he says, I wish you were all the way I am. He's like, but you might have a different gift. And then he says later, if you can't exercise self-control, you should marry. For it's better to marry than to burn with passion. So what I love about that is it's not like, well, God's calling me to single, but I desire to get married. How do those relate? Paul's like, you want to have sex? Get married. You're like, oh, okay. It's better to marry than burn. All right, well, I'm on fire, so let's do it. Like, that's your text, right? What I love about that, here's a lesson to it that wasn't in the question, but it's part of it. Do you notice where Paul puts sex? It's a driver towards marriage. So that desire for intimacy, he says, let the frustration of it not being fulfilled be an engine that pushes you through evaluation into a covenant of marriage. Because Paul's assumption, biblically, we can talk more about this later, is that marriage is safest in the covenant of marriage. Because that's sex is safest in the covenant of marriage. Because in that marriage bond, someone's saying, I don't just want to use your body for my gratification, I want to love all of you. Sex in marriage is radical self-donation. It's not using the other, right? And so he says, when you have a sexual desire, restrain it. And yet that buildup of restraint, let it propel you through the process of evaluating another human being. And then do you see, okay, I don't just want to use your body. Do I trust you? Do I enjoy talking to you? Most of marriage will be hanging out. It shocks some people, you know? So you go, so hold off the sexuality. That part will be fun, almost guaranteed. But let me hold that back and see, but do I like talking to you? Do I trust you? Do you have godly character? And then when we say yes, till death do us part, marriage is that final consummation and commitment within the safety of covenant with someone who says, I want all of you. I care about your mind, your heart, your body, all of it. But what's fascinating about that, he says, if you have a desire for sexual intimacy, then get married. So if you're like, well, God's called me to singleness, but I desire to be married. Okay, that desires don't always lead you to the truth. But Paul here is saying, if you long for marriage, that's not bad. You should get married. Isn't that interesting? Sometimes it's that simple. I'll say this, Matthew 19, Jesus is talking about marriage, and he puts a high bar on once you get in, you're never supposed to get out of marriage. And so his disciples say, if that's such a case, maybe it's better not to get married. They're like, oh no, that's a high bar. I got to stay with her until I die. Maybe I shouldn't get married. And Jesus says, not everyone can receive this saying, but only those to whom it's given. There are eunuchs who've been so from birth. Do you know what a eunuch is, by the way? You know, we were going to talk about it. Yeah, you're not having kids if you're a eunuch because something tragic happened to you. You can ask Thomas about it later. And he says, no. There are eunuchs who've been so from birth. And then he says, there's eunuchs who've been made eunuchs by men, which in my view, that's the saddest group of people in the text. And then he says, and there are eunuchs who've made themselves eunuchs for the sake of the kingdom of heaven. He doesn't necessarily mean that they're chopping off the privates. He's just saying they've decided to be celibate for the sake of the advancing of the kingdom. But then he says, but let the one who's able to receive this, receive it. He says, that's not for everybody. There's going to be some people that God gives you the ability to be celibate for life, then you stay single for life. But if you long to have intimacy, get married. Isn't that great?
Yes.
All right, let's keep going.
Follow-up question to that. You hit on it in the middle of it, but what are the pros to singleness? I remember whenever I was in college, I thought the goal was to get a girlfriend or be dating, and I felt like I was failing if I was single. But then someone showed me that there's actually like a gift to singleness and a pro. You mentioned flexibility, but maybe what are some of the pros to being single in college?
Yeah. I mean, Paul will talk about it in 1 Corinthians 7. Where is it? Let me find it. Hang on a second here. The unmarried man is anxious about the things of the Lord, how to please the Lord. The married man is anxious about worldly things, how to please his wife, and his interests are divided. The unmarried or betrothed woman is anxious about things of the Lord, how to be holy in body and spirit. But the married woman is anxious about worldly things, how to please her husband. I say this for your own benefit, not to lay a restraint on you, but to promote good order and to secure your undistracted devotion to the Lord. So it's interesting. He's talking about whether or not you should get married. And he says married people are distracted. He's like, married men, they're worried about how to please their wives, which some guys are like, that's the exact thing I want to get worried about. That sounds like a good thing to figure out. And you go, you know what? I used to joke about this a lot. I'm like, a lot of guys get surprised when you get married. What pleases your wife isn't necessarily that exciting for you. For me, getting engaged was a lot of shopping for plates and things like that, and what kind of duvet cover do we want, and it was like, do you like this plate or that plate? This plate or that plate? I'm like, I can't care. I can't. I'm trying. It's not there. Like, oh man. And so there's just a lot of challenges with getting married. And Paul says, hey, like marriage is a gift from God. He says, but when you're not married, you can do whatever you want. You want to travel to Europe, just go now. Sleep on a buddy's couch now. You and your wife sleeping on a buddy's couch, probably not happening, right? You're going to need a job, you're going to get some money and get a hotel room. And so there's a freedom with singleness you don't have when you're married. And that freedom creates opportunity. And so you can do so many things now because your life's not slowed down. Like I talk about this with my staff all the time. A lot of them are single. And this started a couple of years ago. One of my staff was like, hey, have you seen this TV show? I said, no. You seen this one? No. Seen this show? No. She's like, how have you not seen these shows? I said, I got 3 kids. I said, I have 30 minutes of discretionary time every day with which to do what I choose. And I remember when I said that to her, she was like, I've got like 7 hours. I'm like, I know. I said, because I used to be you. And I'm so tired, right? And I'm aging rapidly. And I love my wife and I love my kids, but I have a lot of restriction that you don't. You can accomplish so many things with so much speed. And so there are limitations to singleness and there are limitations to marriage. What human beings tend to do is we see the benefits of another season and the limitations of our own until that season's over. And so there are limits to your season, but don't miss the benefits. You have freedom to move. And Paul says there's a purpose for that, to secure an undistracted devotion to the Lord. I want to get good at the most important relationship because it will influence every other relationship. And when that dawned on me as a single person, I realized, well, then that's what I want to do. I want to get real good at being devoted. That word means to be alongside. I want to get good at being alongside the Lord. And so for me, I got rid of my TV, started writing out books of the Bible. I just wanted to load my mind with thoughts of God. I started getting involved in doing youth ministry. I'm like, I got a lot of time. And I remember I've told this story, I think I put it in the book of I was 22, 23, living in the suburbs and thought, I've got time. I'm going to invest in these middle school and high school kids. I was just where they are and I know a bit more than them. And I remember I was in the back. I'd never really given sermons. I'm like in the back. We used to meet in this high school and I'm like trying to study the Bible, get ready to preach. And this little middle school kid ran by and I said, hey man, how you doing? And I knew he had just helped his dad move in an apartment downtown because his parents just got divorced. And so I said, how are you doing? And he said, good. And I was like, well, how was it you were with your dad? How'd that go? And he said, it's fine. And I remember saying to him, I was like, hey man, like, I know you're going to be good. And I know God's going to take care of you. I said, but it sucks. And it's okay to say it sucks. And he started crying. And the little guy fell into my arms and I just held him for a bit. And I remember holding him and I was like, his parents have put a chaos in his world. He can't process with them what he's feeling. And his friends don't have the emotional security either. And I just started thinking about like, dude, I'm single in the suburbs. I'm like, have so many desires I want for my life, but God, you're letting me know your word and help this kid. All right, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to get good at being yours. I am yours. I'm running with you. And Lord, if you will, I want to find a woman. Paul told Timothy, flee youthful lust, pursue righteousness, love, faith, joy, and peace, along with those who call out to the Lord out of a pure heart. I decided I am setting my eyes on the King. I am running after Jesus. And when you do that, like David with Jonathan, you say, I'm following the Lord. You look up and there's a buddy that wants him just as bad as you do. And so that's the illustration I use a lot of, like, when you are running hard after the Lord, I'm going with him. He says, do it along with those who call out to God out of a pure heart. You don't know who some of those people are, but once you decide I'm pursuing the Lord, that's what I'm doing, the Jonathans start popping up. You get buddies that want to run with God as much as you do. You get mentors that suddenly will invest in you. And then you'll meet some people that are cute. And you'll go. And you just run up next to them and get married, right? That's how it works. And I used to tell God that. I want to meet my wife on the mission field. I don't want to be at a lot of mixers trying to meet her. Those aren't bad. I said, but I just want to be out there and meet her during the work. And so I was getting involved in a lot of ministry, and that's where I met Donna. And it's like, yeah, she's already running. I'm already running. Now we're just running together. So I don't even remember what the original question was, but I got excited. All right, let's keep going.
Good, and that's pretty. Here's maybe two more questions on singleness in that state. How do you navigate the desire to be in a relationship, but also trust the Lord's timing?
Yeah, I would say 1 Peter chapter 5 says, humble yourselves under the mighty hand of God so that at the proper time he may exalt you. So you go, I want to be in a relationship. Lord, how do I trust you? Well, that's part of it. It's going, let me get to know the character of God. Do I trust him? And he says, humble yourselves under the mighty hand of God, trusting at the right time he'll exalt you. And then it says, casting your anxieties on him because he cares for you. And that's the secret. You go, he's telling me he's almighty and he cares about my anxieties. And he's telling me, take your cares, give them to me. Just give them to me and trust that in due time, I'll put you where you're meant to be. And it was a different thing for me to start to pray that way. God, I desire to be loved. God, I desire to be known. God, I desire to have sex. God, I desire to be married. And I'm not going to take those to secret, crazy places. I'm just going to keep putting those in your hands, and you're not going to give me an answer today. God, here's my desire. I'm going to hand it to you. But the more I do that, I go, but I trust him with it. I trust him with it. And why does God make us wait? And that's a question. So like, if I want to get married, why is he making it wait so long? I mean, there's reasons why God doesn't give us stuff all the time in the Bible. Abraham in Genesis, I just want a kid. And God's like, you'll get a kid. It's going to be 25 years and you'll be 100. And why did God do that? Was it because Abraham wasn't ready? You know, some people are like, well, you'll get married when you're ready. You're like, well, when am I ready? I'm ready now. You know, like, it's not always about your development. It's about the development of God's plan. Abraham, I know you want this kid, but I need the kid to be a miracle because people need to know salvation's all of grace. So I got to wait until there's no human way that you and Sarah can have a baby. And then if you read the text, it's interesting. By faith, go sleep with Abraham, even though his body is as good as dead. That's what it said. And Sarah starts laughing. She said, and when I am old, will I have pleasure? And you're like, I know. Did y'all get in that tent? You're 100 years old. Figure it out. So when you have that baby, it's a miracle. And when you go, salvation is a gift from God, not by works. And so he's like, Abraham, I'm not making you wait because I'm mean and because you're not worthy. It's just my plan's got to work this way. That's good. Okay. Sometimes it is because you're not ready. When God set his people free from Egypt, remember he said there was a short way to the promised land. And he says he didn't take them the short way. Why? Because the Philistines were there and they'll see war. He said, y'all just aren't ready. Somebody like, I want to get married. He's like, yeah, but we got some baggage to unpack and throw away. And so we're going to go a long way through the desert and get you where you need to be, right? And so it's not always about your discipleship. Sometimes it's just about the development of God's plan. And so to me, I go, God, I don't know why you're making me wait. I was the last one of my friends to get married. Like, I don't know why that's the case. Some of it's, Lord, you refining me. Some of it's just, it's not time yet. But I want to trust your character in the midst of that. So I'm going to humble myself under your mighty hand, knowing in due time you'll exalt me. And I'm just going to keep casting my anxieties on you because I believe you care about me. Make sense?
That's pretty.
Is that good? Okay. Y'all are quiet because I'm not sure. I'm not sure. All right. Okay.
Hey, well, I love the honesty of this next question. It says, I've never been in a relationship, but I constantly crave intimacy, and I try to fill in the gaps of loneliness with lust, whether it's pornography or sex. How do I stop feeling like I will never be in a relationship because of my past? And how do I battle that lust?
Yeah. How do I stop feeling like I'll never be in a relationship because of the past? That's a voice of condemnation. You will never be something good because of what happened in the past. And God doesn't talk like that. God talks like there is therefore now no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus, right? That's our gospel. 1 Corinthians 7. The sexually immoral will not inherit the kingdom of God. And such were some of you, but you have been washed. You have been sanctified, right? That God makes you something else. So when the devil says what you were, you say, yeah, I was that, but he put his hands on me and he made me something new. And so you just say, no, the grace of God has made me something else. I'm not defined by my tragedies. I'm defined by his victory. That's what I'm defined by. So I can weep over my past, but I'm not dominated by it, right? So that voice of condemnation, you go to war with it with truth, right? Because that shame will make you slink back to your sin for comfort. Now, in terms of addiction to pornography, man, I mean, the most rigorous, reliable studies, Mark Rigneris, we were talking about him earlier out of the University of Texas, asked the question, there's a lot of surveys about pornography and people are like, you get really different answers. He asked the question, did you look at porn in the last month? Rather than saying like, do you look at it a lot? People are like, I don't know. What is a lot? What do you mean by look? And he's like, all right, did you look at it in the last month? 86% of young men said yes. 30 some odd percent of young women, 18 to 25. So it's a dominating force in the young generation, and it's having an incredible impact on your sense of self. It lodges shame into your heart. It messes up dating scripts. It's just, I hate it. I hate pornography, and I hate it because I love you. So if you struggle with it, I don't hate you because I struggled with it too, but I hate what it does to people. I watch it steal their joy and sense of purpose, right? But I just think you got to be honest about it. Patrick Carnes, who's one of the leading voices on sexual addiction, I wanted to read someone from like the counseling world. He's the guy that actually coined the term. I wanted to understand how he talked about it. And he said, addiction is an intimacy disorder. I feel unlovable and unloved. And so do I go to a thing, a drink, a pill, a screen. Why? Because it does what it promises. It releases a chemical hit that for a moment takes away the bad feelings. That's what you're doing when you're looking at porn, taking a little hit to take away the bad feelings, right? And but you got to see, like Paul told the Corinthians, this is sin against your own body. You're hurting you. And so the Bible's not telling you, hey, let's go to some bygone old-fashioned morality, saying this is hurting you. It's reinforcing a dynamic. Sexuality releases not just dopamine, that's the happy chemical in your brain that says, whatever you just did, do that again, do that a lot, right? That's what dopamine does. And oxytocin is a bonding hormone. It means I want you to bond with that person, right? That's why there's no such thing as casual sex, because when you have sex, your body releases a bonding hormone. Why? Because it's meant to reinforce intimacy. That's why you're meant to hold it back to someone that you can trust. Some people start having sex with someone and then realize a couple years later, oh, I can't trust you. And you go, whoops, well, you've been bonding with a person who wasn't worthy of your trust. So you hold the sexuality back so you can evaluate their character. And you go, can I trust this person? And then I want to give them all of me, right? And so again, that's why Paul says, don't sleep with a prostitute, is how he says it to the Corinthians, just because you're sinning against yourself. You're hurting you. And so you go, man, I want to seal that off. I don't want to be bonded to this screen. And I don't want to be bonded to people that I don't care about all of them and they don't care about all of me. So I got to shut the door on that hard. And we can talk all about sort of how to get out of an addiction to pornography. That'd be a longer conversation. It's not really necessarily a dating one. But I would say don't beat yourself up. Just beat up sin. Get honest about it. Make war against it. Cast it out of your life. And so you may have to get radical. Jesus said, if your right eye causes you to sin, pluck it out. And he didn't literally mean pluck your eye out, so nobody do that tonight, because you can just sin with your left eye. You know, you're like, it didn't work, you know, and then you pluck that eye out, and you can just imagine. And so, but what he was saying is, the writer of Hebrews said it, you have not, in your resistance against sin, you have not resisted to the point of shedding blood. I love that, because the writer of Hebrews is like, man, you're not even bleeding yet. And so you talk to all these guys, you're like, I'm just really struggling right now. And you're like, by struggle, is there much of a fight? Like if it was an MMA fighter, you're like, oh no, it's lost. You're like, okay, like way to struggle, boss. You know, like maybe at least tie it up, put it against the fence. So you just got to do what Romans says, make no provision for the flesh. And so you go, okay, where am I making provision? You know? And for me, let me just give you all some grace. Like when I discipled young people, here's how I do it. When someone says like, can you mentor me, disciple me? I go, yeah, man. So we'd sit down and have coffee and I'd explain the gospel to them, that we're forgiven and loved by the grace of God through the finished work of Jesus. Do you understand the gospel? Yeah. And then the next meeting is, let's talk about your porn problem. And every guy I've ever done that with was like, how did you know? Are you a problem? Like, no, statistically, 86%. It's very likely. Every epistle Paul writes, every one, he's like, God loves you. Let's talk about sex because you guys are making a mess of this thing. Like, read every one. So you just go like, that's all of us. It's a powerful driver. It's a fire. And a fire in a fireplace will bring warmth to a home. Fire outside a fireplace will burn your house down. And the desire of sexuality is good, it's from God, but put it in its proper boundaries if you want it to be a life-giving force in your life. So you don't want it to run rampant in your room through a screen. So just get it out. Get your computer out. Get your phone out of your room. Get an alarm clock. They're cheap. Go buy one, you know. Just get the screens away from your bedside. You don't need screens all around your head when you're at your weakest point. Get some buddies to hold you accountable and don't just use vague words like, man, I was really struggling this week. Me too. Okay, let's pray for struggles. Like, no, tell them what's going on. Like, what does that even mean? You know, my buddies and I, when we wanted accountability for stuff like that, we would preemptively call each other. We just started to know when I'm tired, that's when I'm more susceptible to linger in front of a TV and then make decisions I regret the next day. So we were like, let's not just confess our sin afterwards. Let's sabotage it early. So we get to points where we call each other on the phone. I'm like, man, I'm exhausted. I'm in a bad mood. I'm going home and I'm about to make a bad choice. You know, and like, you just help each other, you know, like, what is it? Odysseus, tie him to the mast, right? So you don't wreck your life with the sirens. So anyway, I'm sorry. I'm going long on all these. We haven't got to dating, but yeah,
that's good. Yep. Speaking, next topic, talking about looking for someone to date. It's not her question. She's asking on behalf of you guys, but welcome up Millie to come ask her next question.
Oh,
coming up.
Hey.
So my question is, how should I look for a significant other in a way that pleases God?
Yeah, that's a good question. How should I look for him? I would say you want to position yourself in an environment that increases the likelihood of finding qualified candidates. You know what I'm saying? And so it's interesting. The longest chapter in the book of Genesis is Genesis 25. And it's finding a wife for Isaac. And I love that it's the longest chapter in Genesis because God is showing you, hey, I care about this. Sometimes we think that like, oh, God wants me to serve him, love him, but like I'm on my own when it comes to relationships. It's like, no, God cares a lot about this. And you read Genesis 25, it's a lot about God's provision. But you see, the way they did it back then is your parents were real involved in helping find that person. And so Abraham sends a servant to go get a wife for Isaac. And he really has one stipulation, not among the Canaanites. And that wasn't an ethnic thing. The Canaanites had a very different religious structure that bled into sexuality because they used sexuality and worship in some ways that the Bible expressly forbids. So he's like, you can't marry somebody that doesn't have an allegiance to our God that affects the way they make decisions. And so don't even mess around with Canaanites. You know what I'm saying? So like that eliminates quite a bit of the dating pool. If you go like, I need someone who has a cause that they're chasing the Lord and a character that's being shaped by the Lord, that eliminates almost everybody. It just leaves a few wonderful people, right? And so for Abraham's servant, he looked around and was like, okay, where can I find someone like that? He had to go back to the old country. He walked 500 miles. He's like, I'm going to go where they are. The people who love God, I'm going where they are. And that man walked 500 miles to be around those. And people are like, man, I can't go to church this morning. You're like, it's blocks Walk 5 blocks, not 500 miles. So I would say get involved in a vibrant Christian community. Have great Christian friends, because so much of the evaluation can be done in a context where it's not one-on-one. Dating, it's very natural to pair off, but I would say as much as you can, get in a vibrant Christian community, serve in your church, get involved in community in your church, because you may go like, oh, that guy's cute. And then after a couple nights of hanging out with your friends, you're like, oh, he's super weird. Like, I'm glad we didn't like pair off, because we'd be just out at a dinner and I'd be like, uh-oh, like I found this out in a pretty low barrier to entry. But I would say get yourself in an environment where you go, you know what? I am much more likely to find a qualified candidate in these circles, or at least see the kind of qualities I'm looking for. Does that make sense? And so it's not long that verb seek or look. It wasn't bad. In Genesis 25, it's like, man, I want to get married. And so he's actively looking, and he goes, the kind of woman he's looking for. Do you remember? He went back to the old country, someone who has a faith in God. And then he wanted to find a woman who was actively working and serving. And then one that had a humble and gracious, hospitable attitude. So he prayed, Lord, let her be a woman that when I ask for a drink of water, she offers to not just give me a drink, but all my camels. And that wasn't just like an arbitrary thing. Like, Lord, let it be the one who sits next to me tonight. Amen, hallelujah. You're like, no, I'm sorry, bro. He was praying, Lord, I want a woman that serves, cares. And if you notice, she wasn't serving Isaac, like, ooh, that guy's cute, I'm gonna serve him. Who was she serving? Some old man. But if she'll be kind to that old man, she's kind even when she doesn't see a direct benefit for her. That's the kind of woman you want to marry. So I'm looking for someone who's willing to walk with God and has a godly character. That's what he's looking for. So you want to get in environments like that. That's why I really encourage people get involved in a church. And then once that happens, I mean, how do you seek them out? We can talk about all that, like how you introduce people to dates, whatever. I think it's good for men to initiate. You know, there's a proverb, a man who finds a wife finds a good thing. So there's something about the guy doing the finding. Like you look statistically, last time I checked the statistics, they were asked women, how many asked a guy on a date in a given year? And it was 12%. Most women don't want to initiate with men. Doesn't mean all don't, but women tend to, and again, it wasn't like a Christian survey, want men to initiate. So it's not bad too. But you see Ruth with Boaz, you know, read the book of Ruth. Boaz is a good dude. Ruth's hanging out in a good guy's area. Boaz is not making a move. And so Ruth just has to ask him, so are we doing this or not doing this? Like, what are we doing here, man? And that's not wrong to do. Boaz was a good dude. He just wasn't picking up the pieces there. He wasn't figuring it out. So I think it's good for men to initiate, but I don't think it's wrong for women to say they're interested. That makes sense. We can get more into the details than that, but I think you got to deal with that.
Yeah, that's good. Let's keep moving. Thinking about the topic of actually dating someone and loving someone, I'm going to combine two questions. How do I love God more than I love my significant other? And how do I prevent that relationship or that person from becoming an idol? So how do I love God more than I love that person, not make that person an idol?
Yeah, I would say, how do I love God more? We cultivate what we honor. I mean, you know what cultivate is. Like if you're cultivating a plant, what do? I use my energy to create an environment where that thing can flourish and reach its potential. Right? If I'm cultivating an apple tree, I'm going to create an environment with the sun and the dirt and water. I'm going to make it something that it can reach its potential. So if I'm going to cultivate an intimacy with God, how do I do that? Well, how do I position my life in a way, and what do I need to put around me that lets this intimacy with God reach its maximum potential? So I would ask that. How do you move your time, your energy, your attention in such a way that you're prioritizing? If Colossians says all things are made by him and for him, how do I now let my schedule represent that I want to cultivate that intimacy with him? So what I used to have college students do is anytime I'd ask a college student how they're doing, they would say busy or some version of that. So I started just handing them a sheet of paper that had every single day of the week just listed by hour. And I said, don't give me your ideal schedule. Just fill in your schedule, what you know, and give yourself 8 hours of sleep a night. I don't even know if you sleep that much. But if you give yourself 8 hours, there's 168 hours in a week. If you slept 8 hours a night, that's 56 hours. Okay? Yeah. So you got 112 waking hours. I'm like, all right, you got 112 waking hours. You spend 15 in class, maybe 12 in class. That's 100 conscious hours a week. What are you doing in those 100 hours? I spend an hour a day getting ready. Okay, 93 conscious hours a week. Now what? I spend 7 hours working out. Okay, and you start to whittle it down. And what I found with a lot of conscience is like, oh, I've got like 40 unaccounted for hours a week. And you go, okay, so never tell me you're too busy to linger, because that's what happens. She'll tell me like, you should read your Bible. I don't know, man, I'm so busy. Okay, yeah, God just didn't give you enough time to fulfill his will, did he? I hate when he cheats us like that. I hate when he cheats us. He steals from us. And God has given you time. God did not cheat you. You're just disorganized. But when were you going to figure it out? You're not going to figure it out in high school. You're just doing everything they say. It's in college, you figure that out. So look at your schedule, put your whole class schedule into it, put your sleeping into it, put your getting ready into it, put your workout into it, and then see all that blank space and say, I'm tithing this to the Lord. And every semester I would look up and go, God, where is the place on campus I'm going to steal away and it's just you and me? And I would find a secret place every semester. It's just me and God. And I would write out, I wouldn't just read a Bible or listen to a podcast. I would write out my feelings. I would pray. Sometimes it was the football stadium. Sometimes it was a park bench. Sometimes it was a spot in the library. One time it was a school I would sneak onto the roof of. And that's where me and God would hang out. And I just cultivated that intimacy with him. And as I prioritized that relationship, I valued it, started to miss him. And so I think that's part of it. So I wouldn't shame yourself, but study yourself. Plato said that. A culture cultivates what it honors. And if you want to honor the Lord, cultivate it with your time and your energy, right? And then how do you not make that person an idol? I would say an idol is the thing you look for to comfort you, provide for you, care for you, give you significance and meaning. And if you do that to another human being, you will crush that relationship. I mean, if you go to a guy and say, I need you to give me affirmation, meaning, purpose, value, a guy can't do that. No human being can carry the freight of your value as a human being, right? And so you have to go, that insatiable desire to be loved deeply and affirmed and valued, that's a God-sized desire that God alone can meet. And once you get that love met there, then you come to that other person and you are a fountain, not a drain, right? I mean, that's what happened with the woman at the well. Jesus came to her, can I get a drink of water? She said, what are you doing talking to me? And he says, if you knew who was talking to you, I'd give you a drink and it would well up into eternal life. He says, I want to give you something that will overflow from you in life. And then he says, go get your husband. She said, I don't have a husband. He said, yeah, you've had 5. And the guy you're with now won't marry you. And what he's telling her there, he's not trying to shame her. He's going to give her eternal life. But he says, you've been misdiagnosing your need. You've been going to these men and they keep letting you down. And he said, but now I'm here. And I want to give you a love and a satisfaction and a life that will overflow out of you. And so you got to have a source if you're going to be a source. That's what John says, beloved love. And so when you cultivate an intimacy with God and know that you're loved, it's easy to love other people. It's easy to care about other people. I experienced this, and I'll tell one quick story. I remember I used to walk into the student center when I was a college student, and I'd go into the lunchroom, and I would just look for the people that were my friends, right? You walk in, you see who's noticing you, and then you walk where your friends are. And I remember there was one day I was walking past, and there was like a little study lounge area on the way to the lunchroom, and there was a dude playing the piano. And it was beautiful. Like, I'm not really into piano music, but he was doing something special over there. And I didn't even think about it. I was walking, and I just sort of turned and walked up to the piano. And then I got real self-conscious. Like, I'm just standing there watching him like, you play pretty thing. I was like, what am I doing? So I just kind of sat by him, and then I didn't know what to do. And so I was started reading. I had a devotional midday, which I didn't even know people did that. I was like, all right. But I had this moment where I'm praying and about things that were bothering me, trusting the Lord, read a little bit, listened to this beautiful music, so inspired. And then I walked into that lunchroom, and it was literally I used to walk in worried about who sees me, who notices me, is anyone going to invite me to their table? But I just had this moment where I was just sitting with God, satisfied in God, loving God. And I walked in the lunchroom, and I was like, God, I've never even prayed about who you'd want me to sit by. And there was someone sitting by herself. And I said, I'm just going to go sit with her. And it turns out she was having a really rough day, really rough moment. And I just got to encourage her. And I thought, I wouldn't have done that. And I thought, when I have a source, I can be a source. Yeah. But when I don't, I'm coming in with a scarcity mindset, trying to draw from all y'all. And that's why a lot of relationships go sideways. It's a bunch of drains trying to suck from each other rather than fountains overflowing love because they got a source.
Right. That's great. James is going to hop up and ask our next question.
Oh, great.
Hello. So this question is asking, what does it really mean to have a Christ-centered relationship?
I don't know, James. I don't know what they mean by that. I would say Colossians will say it, all things are made by him and for him. I'm made for the Lord. What's the greatest commandment? To love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind. So I am a Christ-centered person in the sense of I want to prioritize that relationship more than anything. And so when I have a Christ-centered relationship, what does that mean? I want to know God and I want to honor him. You want to know God and you want to honor him. Okay. So people go like, well, how are we supposed to do it? What does it mean for us? I would say you're both people pursuing an intimacy with God and you're both people with a character being shaped by God. I got a cause and I got a God-shaped character, right? And I think if that's the case, and you got two Christ-centered people learning what it is to do all the one another's, to encourage one another, bless one another, build each other up. And so I don't necessarily think it means, oh, that means we read certain devotional books together. We only listen to certain kinds of music. It's like, no, we're two people pursuing the Lord and now we're doing it together. And when you get married, there's a whole different set of commands of what that looks like for a married couple, right? That we become a picture of how Christ loves the church, you know, in Ephesians 5, of how the man honors the woman, how the woman honors the man. And so I don't know, in a dating relationship, I think it's two people who say, I want to chase an intimacy with the Lord as my cause, and I want God's character to shape my character, then they're going to have a relationship that honors the Lord. And that's what I think a Christ-centered relationship looks like. I don't think it looks like a particular set of activities per se.
It's great.
Make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, great.
Angelica, you want to hop up and ask your question? Great.
Hello. My question is, how do you know the person you're dating is the one?
Oh, man.
Ooh, that's a fun one.
Skywriting, you look for certain, no, I'm just kidding. Yeah. How do you know that person's the one? Let me give you two sets of answers, right? One, I would say, and I've said it a bunch of times, so I won't belabor this. Like, what kind of person are you looking for? Paul told Timothy, flee youthful lust, pursue righteousness. So you want someone that's pursuing the things of God. I want to know him. I want to be involved with him. You're looking for that kind of cause. So you're running together. And then you want a God-shaped character. Can I trust them, right? And so you're watching the way they make decisions, right? Jesus said it, faithful with little, faithful with much. Are they lying little white lies to their roommates? Well, you think they won't lie to you? Are they always fighting with somebody, always got beef with somebody? You think you'll have a peaceful home, right? This is the modern misconception about dating, is dating is like these little mini marriages. It's not. Dating exists for evaluation. I'm evaluating somebody, right? The Bible doesn't have dating. Everybody knows that. That wasn't the way people paired off back then. Your parents had a lot more to do with it. But the Bible has a lot to say about evaluation. When you look at the book of Proverbs, it says it's better for a man to live on the corner of a roof than in a house with a contentious woman. That's not talking to the married guy, right? Some married man on the corner of his roof like, now you tell me. Like, that's not who that was for. That's for the young single guy going like, oh, okay, if she's always fighting with somebody, I don't need to link my life up with her because there'll be no peace in my home. A man with an unrestrained anger is like an unwalled city. Is your guy always upset? Is he always mad? Is he always ticked off at somebody? Then it will never feel safe to be with him. So if he's always mad like that, you don't stack on forever. So the Bible's giving you all these ways to evaluate the character of somebody. You're just watching them, right? Watching what they do. And so you're seeing, do they want to chase the Lord? That's why I get so many questions like, well, I'm dating somebody, but he doesn't go to church. How should I get him to go to church? I'm like, you don't. I don't know what that should is. You've decided to chase the Lord. If he doesn't want to, you go, bye, Gina. Like I am. And if that's not what you want, he doesn't want to be dragged, and you don't want to drag someone through the rest of your life. So you go, no, we want to be running together, right? And so I'm watching, Do you have a God-shaped cause? Because what you chase, what you value will shape your values. And your values will shape your decisions, and your decisions will shape your life. So you see, do they value God? Do they prioritize Him? Does it make it in their schedule? Cause, character. Can I trust you? And then chemistry. Do we like hanging out? Do you make me laugh? So you're looking for those things. How do you know you got them? If you look at the book of Song of Solomon, which is the romance book, right? What do you see at the beginning? You see excitement. That's valuable, right? It opens with her saying, let him kiss me with the kisses of his mouth, right? It's not wrong. You see, like, are you excited about this person, right? And that's a value. But then you see it's his character that excites her. Your name is like oil poured out. She goes, you have a good name, right? I trust your name. And so you see a growing sense of desire to be with each other, right? He comes leaping over the hills, peering through the lattice, right, is what it says, like a stag upon the hills, coming for his beloved, right? I think one of the things that helps you when you're dating someone is, do I want to be with them, right? Is there a growing sense of commitment? That's one of the things you look for. I remember asking a buddy of mine, because like I said, I was the last person to get married. I'd always ask people, how do you know when you know? And they're like, you just know. I'm like, that is so unhelpful. You know what I'm saying? Like, y'all ever heard that? And I finally asked one guy, I was like, everyone says that and I don't know what that means. And he was like, man, when I used to date people, there would always be, whenever we ran into a problem, some friction, they said something weird. He said, there was always a part of me that's like, I knew this wouldn't work. I got to get out of here. And he said, I just knew they're like, I got to get away from this person. He said, but with Rebecca, the girl he was dating and ultimately married, he said, whenever we ran into like a friction, a problem, a miscommunication, I found in myself, we want to work through it. I want to resolve it. This thing between us, I want to move it so we can get back to a sense of intimacy. And he said, I just noticed that in myself. Before I was just like, I'm out. It's like, this one, I really want to work through problems. And he's like, noticing that in me was significant. I think this is different. And so that growing sense of commitment, I want to be with you. And then a sense of communication. And can we work through problems? And you see that in Song of Solomon. Can we work through miscommunication? You can have someone that you think they're hot, cute, funny, smart, but if every time y'all fight, it's just blow up or freeze out and it's always drama, you go, you don't want a life of drama. Life brings drama. Don't marry drama, right? But that's every romantic song is all these horrible relationships. And you go, no, we need to be able to have healthy communication. Can we communicate in a way that honors each other? Is it harsh words like the thrust of a sword or the words of the wise that bring healing? When I hurt her feelings, does she come to me humbly and tell me so I can confess and repent? Or does she attack or freeze me out or make me guess why she's mad? Like, do we have a way of communicating that's healthy, right? And then I think it's, can we survive confession? The more I trust this person's character, dating is I'm evaluating, can I trust you? And how do you do that? You just share a little bit more information at a time, right? I mean, that's what dating is. At first, it's just like, hey, how's the weather? So cold out. How's your favorite sports team? And then after a while, you talk about things you actually care about. And if they're like, I love music, music's stupid, you're like, all right, bye. You just like don't have something to touch base on. But then as you get to know each other and talk more, you go, I'm sharing more of me, and they're reciprocating with interest. I'm sharing more with me. And then if you start to share some of your sad things, some of your regrets, some of your difficult things, in the book of Song of Solomon, it pictures the woman's heart like a dove, and he's tender and invites her to come towards him. A dove's a tender thing, and he's gentle. And so you see, is someone gentle with the most tender parts of my heart? And if you see, hey, this person, I want to be with them, we communicate in a healthy way. And the more I tell them about myself, they don't respond with harshness. They're not cruel. They care and are kind for me. Then you see a desire to pair off. So long answer, short question, but that's a couple things to look for. Makes sense.
Pretty. Caleb is going to ask our next question, which I will emphasize, this is not Caleb's question. He laughed out loud whenever I gave him this question.
Okay.
To read.
Oh, great. All right.
My question is, what is the best way to break up with someone with kindness and courtesy?
Okay. Yeah. All right. Oh, you're saying
Caleb
that,
is not breaking up with someone in
No,
this
I was
moment.
about to say, are you dating someone right now? Oh, okay. Whoops. Well, I think you kind of said it, right? With kindness and clarity, right? Ephesians 5 says, speaking the truth to one another in love, we will in all things grow. And I think that's what you do. If I'm dating somebody and I don't think it's going to work, I'm going to speak. I'm not going to ghost them. I'm not going to disappear. I'm going to honor them enough to communicate, right? It's interesting. I read a survey about it that was like, how many people have been ghosted in their life? And it was the vast majority of people. And they're like, what were some words that explain that experience? They were all terrible. I felt betrayed. I felt hurt. I felt rejected. And they asked that same group, how many of you have ghosted someone? And it was almost the same percentage of people. You're like, oh, okay. So this horrible thing you hate, you also do to others. All right. Well, then we need to stop that. So if I'm dating someone, we've been on some dates, and I go, I don't think this is going to work. I go, okay, I need to tell them it's not going to work. I'm going to speak to them. And I'm going to speak the truth. I'm going to be honest with them, right? And I think clarity is kindness, right? Proverbs says it. It's an honest answer is a kiss on the lips. And that doesn't mean an intimacy. It's a sign of respect. So I'm going to be honest with them, right? 1 or 2 dates, it doesn't need to be this long speech, right? If you went on 1 date, it could be a text, right? If you've been on 5, 6, 7, 8, probably not a text. That might be cold-blooded. But it probably doesn't need to be long. Speak the truth in love. Love means I'm going to be loving in how I do it. It can be loving in the location you pick. Anytime I broke up with someone, it was in a semi-public space so they could leave whenever they wanted to, in a car in her driveway. I remember one girl, we broke up at a park so we could both leave in our own cars whenever we wanted to. I was like, we better go to this park because you can go off on a tree by yourself, but there's also a lot of escape routes, And it's the first time I ever saw what Frisbee golf was. I remember watching these two guys keep throwing Frisbees not to each other. And this girl's crying, we're breaking up, and I'm like, why? You go over there and throw it back to him. What are these guys doing? I'm sorry, I'm so distracted. These guys don't know how to play Frisbee. Anyway, so I think you want to speak the truth and you want to do it with love. And I think not everyone does this. Christians, don't blame it on God. You hear Christians do that all the time. I would keep dating you. The Almighty doesn't want me to. You're like, no, don't tell him that. Don't blame it on God. Don't blame it on God. Have the courage to say, hey, you know what? I think you're great. I just don't see this going any farther than friendship. So I think, and then be clear. I think we need to stop dating now. I don't want to date anymore. I think you just tell them that. And if they're like, well, can I still call you? And we go places like to the movies and out to dinner and such. No, shut the door all the way. You see what I'm saying? Be clear. No, we're done, right? And so you speak the truth, right? And you do it in love. And so you might want to give them reasons why. I don't think you have to give them a laundry list of their faults. If it's been a longer relationship, you might want to say some of the concerns you have, but you don't have to take jabs at them. You do it with a redemptive hope for them in their life, right? Sometimes it's just not a fit. So I think you speak the truth in love so we can all grow.
That's pretty. I once received the God told me to break up with you. Yeah. It hurt. Hey, 2 more questions if you got the time. One, what does God think about me dating a non-believer? Believer in Jesus.
Yeah. Well, again, Genesis 25, Father Abraham, his one commitment to his son, really the only criteria, she's got to be someone who walks by faith. So if you're saying, I live to honor the Lord, and someone else says, I don't, then you're going different directions. And so you don't want to tether your lives together. Marriage is like a 3-legged race, where you tie a leg together. And if someone says, I'm chasing what? A career or money or comfort, and you're saying, I'm chasing honoring the Lord, those are 2 different directions. So what's going to happen? You're constantly tugging at the bond of your marriage. Or one of you drags the other a direction you don't want to go. And I see so many divorces. What do people say in divorce? Our lives went different directions. What do they mean by that? They don't mean like, well, I was a librarian and she was an accountant. And what do they have in common? Like, they don't mean career. They mean value set. How we raise kids. What do we think matters? Where our money goes? What makes the decision of where we live? Is there any thought about the Almighty, or is it just a thought about my comfort, success, power, some other thing? And so you don't want to tie yourself together with someone who's just going a different direction in life. And not just a different direction. You don't want to lay in bed next to someone with whom you cannot speak about the deepest and most important things in life. If you say, I think I was made by God and I know him, and they're indifferent about that, then the deepest and most profound parts of your heart you can't connect with your spouse with. You don't want that. And so I talk to people that are like, well, he's funny, he's nice, he's smart, and he assents to the possible existence of a deity. Don't go for the common denominator. I have sat with too many people weeping because they went with someone that was nice, fun, they had a good time together, and then they got married. And when they started making big life decisions, their lives went different directions. And you just don't want that. You want to wait for someone that you have heavy overlap in your belief about who God is and what he's done. It'll impact the way you make decisions, the way you love each other, the way you raise kids. So you don't want to settle there. He likes pickleball and you don't, I don't care. You like Pilates, he wants to lift weights, doesn't matter. You love Jesus and he's indifferent, that's a deal breaker. That's easy. And 2 Corinthians 6 is your text. Do not be unequally yoked. A yoke is tying two animals together. Don't be unequally yoked. For what partnership has righteousness with lawlessness? Don't be unequally yoked with the unbeliever. You don't want to do that. And they don't want it either. If you're an unbeliever, don't marry a Christian. That'll bore you to tears, right? And so you say, hey, no, we're both chasing the same cause together. That's where you're going to find life.
That's great. That's great. Maybe one final question is, how do you have that tough conversation about your past, maybe your sexual struggles, pornography use, without scaring them, but being completely honest? And then I guess another question is that question one, how do you have that conversation? And question two, do you have to be fully healed from all of those things before you enter a relationship?
Yeah, so you're talking about in a dating relationship. I advocate for this. You'll see it in the book that when you're starting to date with somebody, you have a moment where you're very honest with them about your past, and particularly as it relates to maybe former relationships in your sexual past. Why bring that up? Because if you're thinking you might marry somebody, you're going to share a bed and your sexuality with one another for the rest of your life. And so there's a place where, do I need to talk to them about what I've done before? And I believe there is. Why do that? Some people say, why would I do that? What do you want when you get married? What are you looking for? What you want is to be fully known and fully loved. You want both. But fully known is scary because that means they don't just know the good parts, they know the bad ones too. But, you know, people sing about it in silly ways. I remember old pop songs where girls are like, oh, I can have no makeup on and just a t-shirt and he still loves me. And you're like, yay. What does that mean? It means when I'm not at my best, he still thinks I'm valuable. And that's an easy way of saying it. But you're saying when I'm at my worst and my weakest, this person cares about me. That's what you want in marriage. That's what makes a marriage bond so powerful. This person knows all of me, even the worst parts, and says yes, and says, I want you. That is so safe. It is so comfortable. It's so powerful. It's holy. But to get to that place, you have to be honest. And that's so scary because they might reject you. And so you don't want to have that conversation on date one. All you got to decide on date one is, should there be a date two? And date 2, 3, you're just getting to know this person. What are you pursuing in life? Can I trust you? Do you trust me? Do we enjoy talking with one another? But as that begins to move from evaluating you to, hey, I see a merging of us, there comes a moment where you go, you know what? I'm not going to confess my life until I can trust your character. It's Song of Solomon. There's nothing scarier to a dove high up in the cleft of a rock than a man's hands. And he doesn't reach up to grab the dove. He calls her to come out. Will you trust me with the deepest and most sensitive parts of your heart, right? And I think what will happen is I think you need to get some wise counsel of how much you share so that it's a real confession, but not with so much detail it's traumatizing. They talk about this a lot in AA, like addiction circles. They call it your first step. And I've sat through many with people where they'll step in front of whether it's Alcoholics Anonymous or Sex Addict Anonymous kind of meetings, and they'll talk about what they've done, and you get help from a mentor to tell a story without an unnecessary amount of detail and without shaming and beating yourself up. It's just being honest. And what happens in those first steps, it's a very vulnerable moment. And then that person is met with a flood of encouragement because of their courage and vulnerability. And it's like you watch the healing happen. That as they're known and not rejected, the sin loses its power. A bonding occurs with others. It's powerful. And so when you can sit with someone and say, hey, I'm not proud of some of the decisions I made, but it's time to let you know, you don't rush it. But if you go, I see this progressing towards marriage, you want to get that done early and tell them. And I think you get good counsel, mentors to help you figure out what's the right amount of detail. I think you prepare a moment where you share. And in the midst of that, you don't need to have multiple meetings about your past over and over and over again. But there may need to be a follow-up where they absorb it. Sometimes when you share a lot of information with someone, it's like vomiting. You feel better, but they got vomit all over them. And so they may need a moment. And I've seen several people do that where I've talked with a lot of young men where they'll find out about the past of their girl, and it makes them sad, and it makes them both sad. But then he goes, but you know what? Jesus forgave me. While we were a sinner, Christ died for me. He loved me. He doesn't hold my sin against me. He doesn't shame me with it. And I'm going to love her like Christ loves the church. And when you have a guy like that, you're going to be so safe. But if he can't forgive you for what you did with someone else, you think he's going to forgive you in marriage when you disappoint him? So thank God you got that figured out before you stacked on until death do us part. So you don't have to do it early in a relationship, but at some point you want to risk the vulnerability of honesty because it's the doorway into intimacy. Now, there's a lot more to say about that. That's a sensitive thing, but that's why I think you have a moment of honesty like that. And again, you want to wait to see, is this someone with a God-shaped character? Because it's that character that makes them worthy of trust.
That's pretty. That's pretty. Well, I do think we have to end with this fun question from tonight.
Okay.
Just this.
Yeah, that's a heavy spot to end.
This is a heavy spot. This is going to turn us in the best direction. We got one submission from a guy. It said, afraid to talk to women. Help me.
Let me say, this is one of the things that when I first started in college ministry, all the questions were different. Guys were like, how do I talk to her dad? You know, some of these like details. And then I watched the onslaught of social media. And then I had guys come up and they're like, so if I am interested, I just talk to her? It's like, yeah, man. What is happening? And I realized like, oh my gosh, like socialization has gotten difficult because we don't spend as much time in spaces like this, just talking to each other, spending time with each other. Look at how much time you spend on a screen. You've done this. The average is 5, 6, 7 hours a week, something like that. A day, excuse me, a day. Yeah. 5, 6, 7 hours a day. Imagine if you didn't have a phone. Imagine what would happen in those 7 hours. You'd just be wandering around, chatting up strangers. That's how most of human beings have lived always. So this is a massive shift in human interaction that's happened to you. You're the first generation this has happened to, and it has messed with your ability to hang out. I remember talking to a guy who's my age. He grew up in like a little town in West Texas. Every Friday, there was a town dance, and there was nothing else to do in the town. So every guy had to ask a girl out every week. And he said, what happened was you just got used to being rejected. He said, because if you asked a girl, it's a pretty low lift. You're not asking like, can I now court you? And we live together forever. It was like, no, can you go with me to the thing? And if she's like, no, I don't want to, you're like, oh. But then what happens? Tuesday's coming around and you're like, would you like to go with me to the thing? And you learn, I can survive rejection and keep moving. But that fear of rejection is keeping many guys from initiating. And it's literally just a lack of reps. You're just not getting as many reps, right? And you just got to get some reps, and you got to get rejected and survive it. Ow, still here. And then you just keep moving, right? And I think that's what you do is you go tell some buddies, let them help you get some courage. Let them help you sharpen some of the wording so you don't say something dumb. Have your wording down, go up and ask her, hey, would you be up for grabbing some coffee this weekend? Hey, can I walk you back to your dorm? Something that's not like, I would like to pursue you now. Like, just don't be terrifying. Like, have some guys help you work it out and give it a shot. And then I would also say, ladies, help them out, because it's a scary thing. And for a guy to do, it's a vulnerable thing. And so even if you don't want to date a guy, if you see a guy trying like that, let him down easy. If you're not interested, say, you know what? Thank you. I'm really honored that you would ask that. I'm not interested right now, but I want to thank you for asking. Just let him know early. Don't mess with him. Or if you're willing to give him a shot, give him a shot. And see, be open to being surprised. But I would just say there's no, it's like pull-ups. The only way to get good at pull-ups is pull-ups. It's a sad thing, reality, but it's true. How do you get good at asking a girl out? You got to take a shot, man. I don't know. Practice in front of a mirror, but at some point you got to look at a girl and ask her to do something. And just know we're praying for you and we want to help. And we do this. We have our door holder Christmas party. I was with a couple hundred door holders. Mm-hmm. All these girls dressed up. I had a couple guys come up to me and they're like, hey man, you wrote a book on dating. Like, how do I date a girl? How do I ask her out? And I was like, well, you start by not talking to me. I said, turn around. I said, I have called the field for you. You are in a room of 100+ women that are not just attending church, actively serving at that church, who have dressed up and come to a party. If you can't play ball on this field, temperature's perfect, there's no wind, just take a shot, man. And risk rejection, you'll survive it. So go to church, get involved in community, get in a vibrant group of friends, watch someone's character, watch how they treat people they're not attracted to, see if you can trust them. And then as you do that, ask them, hey, would you be interested in doing X, Y, and Z? And just get some time together. Maybe don't ask them to just pair off with you. That can be a scary thing for a girl. Ask her to go with a smaller group to something. That's what I did with Donna. When I thought I was interested in her, I said, hey, a group of us are going to a movie. Do you want to go? And about 5 or 6 of us went. So it went from a big crowd of 50 people to 5 or 6. And I just made sure the seat next to me was open.
Don't sit there.
Yeah, I did. Buddy, I was like, what are you doing? Move. But only one option. And then after that, I asked her, can I call you? And after that, I said, hey, my brother's got this event that he invited me to. I need a date. Would you be interested in being my date to this event? So then she knew it was a date, but she knew we weren't alone. And she said, yes. And I just wanted to make the yes not feel scary. And so you want to give them a path that has a lot of out, easy out. It's not scary. Yeah. That makes sense. And then about every third or fourth, once we started doing that and going to stuff, about every third or fourth time I would tell her, hey, I'm really enjoying getting to know you. I'd love to keep doing this. I'm going to keep reaching out to you. But if at any point in this you feel uncomfortable, I trust God with my life, trust him with your life. You can tell me, hey, I don't want to keep doing this, and we don't have to keep doing it. And I just wanted to let her know that, like, I trust God with my life, your life. I don't want you to feel scared or uncomfortable if like, ooh, how do I let him down? You just let me know. And after a while, she told me, you don't have to keep saying that. And I said, I do, because you're not mine.
Right.
We're two people walking with the Lord. Dating, there's no ownership of you. And so we're just two people walking and spending time together. Paul told Timothy to treat older women as mothers, younger women as sisters with absolute purity. It's like, you're my sister. I'm not going to touch, I have no claim on you, but I'm enjoying getting to know you, and I could see this going someplace. And so I kept that separation, which built that tension, but the tension propelled us through the evaluation so I could hurry up and buy that ring. And that's how you do it.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
I feel this guy's question afraid to ask someone out. When I asked my fiance out, I had to call a friend before, and I said, "Tell me I'm not a coward." And he's like, "You're not a coward." And then I dial her number, and then I had notes in my talking notes of things to say. I probably went over the top. Hey, this was a joy, and it's so helpful and encouraging to hear your wisdom and counsel. Can we thank Pastor Ben?
Is that all right? Yeah, great.